My turn, right, Pastor Simon?
Yes, yes, sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
your
no,
turn.
that's okay. Just making sure. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share briefly with you guys. I was supposed to share last week, but my brother actually, Elton, he finished nursing school. And so we celebrated that Wednesday evening last week. And so traded with Pastor Simon. So um, hopefully you're not disappointed that Pastor Simon's not sharing today and that you'll be okay with my sharing. All right. So I wanted to go ahead and just give you guys a little bit of background information. The passage that I just wanted to share with you guys is from Second Kings 6, verses 13 to 17. It's a little before that, but I didn't want to read the whole passage, so I thought I'd just give you a little background information. And so in this passage, in chapter 6, the king of Aram and the nation of Israel were at war. Elisha, the prophet, would often warn Israel of the plans that the king of Aram had. And so, because of this, uh, Elisha would often tell the king of Israel, "Be careful, don't go here, watch out for their armies." And this would often give wins and it would help the Israelites to remain safe. Um, and obviously, this made the king of Aram very furious. Okay, so that's kind of the background information. We know that these two countries are at war. Israel is being supported by Elisha the prophet, and this causes the king of Aram to be very furious. So this is the passage from Second Kings chapter 6, 13 to 17. It's a pretty famous passage, and it's actually one of my favorites that I really enjoy reading often. So it says, and this is the king of Aram speaking. Go, find out where he is, and that's Elisha, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back. He is in Dorthan. So the king of Aram sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and they surrounded the city of Dorthan. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh no, my lord, what shall we do? The servant asked. And this is Elijah speaking. Don't be afraid, the prophet answered. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And this is my favorite part from this passage. And Elisha prayed, open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Right? And I encourage you guys to continue to read the passage in your own time. But if you continue to read, you'll hear that the Israelites were able, Elijah was able to defeat, with the support of God, he blinded uh, the king of Aram's army and they were able to be free. Okay. But the part that I really enjoy is the prayer. Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the servant, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Okay. And so this is a passage that I have always loved. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes I feel like this servant. You know, when I look around, when I'm experiencing life and difficulties, just like the servant, he looks around and he sees this army, so then he immediately becomes afraid. And I'm sure many of us have gone through that own experience in our own lives. You know, for me, actually, it was not that long ago, but in the summer, I was working I'm a counselor right now. And one of the biggest jobs that we do as a counselor is we have to program, which is put all of the students in the correct classes. And so in the summer, that's when we usually do it. And so during this time, the job kind of got difficult. And for some reason, it was more difficult than I've experienced before. And I've done this for like the last 3 years. And so I remember in June and in July, um, I felt very afraid, and felt very like a lot of anxiety. I even remember one time taking a walk with Grace, and we would talk about it, talk about the problem, and talk about the situation. And I felt like I couldn't breathe So I'm not sure about you guys, but you know, that was an experience for me that I can remember where I felt so afraid and I didn't know what to do. Just maybe like the servant, right? But in verse 17, we see here Elijah prays, open his eyes, and the servant is able to see, right? And the servant is able to open his eyes and see the reality. Um, God opened up the servant's eyes, and he was able to see the hills full of horses, chariots of fire all around. And this is a good reminder to me, and this is why I like this passage, because in our life, in my life, there's a lot of difficulties. Like in the first song we sang, God never promised a smooth life, right? So Auntie Janice and I, we worked together, and that's why that first song was like perfect with what we were talking about. Our life is never going to be smooth, but we often forget the reality is that God is working. God is with us. God is supporting us, even if we can't see it. And so I love this part where it reminds me that God is there. And even though I know God has never opened my eyes to see hills full of horses or chariots of fire, I know that God is helping me in my times. I know that, yeah, we all go through this, whether it's with illness, work, family. There are times that we may feel challenged, scared. I think the word alone is often what we feel. Or maybe not capable. And that's how I felt um, in the summer when I didn't think I would be able to solve the problems at work. Um, yeah. But other times I feel like maybe it's not difficulties. Maybe we don't remember that God is working because our life is pretty simple. Maybe we don't have any challenges. Maybe life is good, and we're not seeing so much difficulties, right? But the truth is, no matter whether our life is very difficult or whether our life is simple, we often have to remember, and we are reminded, like from this passage, that God is working, that God is supporting us, and that God is moving not only in our lives, but in the lives of all of our friends and family, in our neighbors, in our coworkers, right? Next week, or actually this Sunday, we're going to be hearing about the work of James Wen. He's a international worker who's going to be visiting our church and speaking in the English, speaking in the Chinese. And he served in the Middle East. Um, like him and many other missionaries, they often had to rely on God and remember that God is working, even when they couldn't see it, right? He was protecting them from the authorities. He was providing them opportunities to share the gospel. He was blessing the work that they were doing. And so that was, they often are reminded because I think missionaries are often reminded about God working because they're constantly needing God's help in the work that they're doing. Right. And I've been one who's actually thankfully have been able to experience that. Um, I've been able to see God's amazing powers overseas, in Mexico, in Qingdao with Uncle Gilbert and Auntie Edith, or in my other trips in China, right? These experiences that I've seen God work. Actually, I remember, I think it was Auntie Vivian. I remember one time we went to, oh, where did we go? I forgot what part of China that, where the earthquakes were. Um, And I remember our team with Auntie Vivian, they got split. We got split, and we went into the city, and she went into more of like the rural area. Um, and definitely, both all of us, our team, were able to see God's amazing power. I remember like being a little worried, like, oh, is Auntie Vivian gonna be okay? I think she has to live in tents, and in the midst of the earthquake, and they're supporting like the villagers. Um, and I think, during that experience, we were able to see God's amazing hands. Um, and so all of these experiences are gifts from God that I may have not experienced if I didn't go out, I think we can say that we definitely know and experience God in America, in our homes. But I think from my own personal experience, I've seen God work in so many amazing ways when I go and go on missions, right? And so that's just kind of, a takeaway that I wanted to share with you guys. Uh, Remember that God is working even when we can't see it. In your own difficulties here, with work, with in relationships, with illness, remember, even when we don't see it, remember that God is working, just like that servant who saw it. We may not see it, but it is there. God is there. God is serving. And then the other prayer that I hope for our church, and I invite you guys to pray with me on this, is that sometimes it's important that we step out of our comfort zone, our daily lives, to be able to see Him work in amazing ways. And that's why I think as a church, we want to encourage our members, no matter how young or old, to go and experience God in a different place. And so, I hope, for the ones here, and hopefully as we bring back this message to more of our church, that we would challenge ourselves to see, God and pray, God, do you want me to perhaps go to Taiwan? Do you want me to, is there a mission trip that you know about through another friend's church? So just to pray for those opportunities. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of remind you of God working in our lives, but also seeking that, right? Being able to desire to see God work in amazing ways outside of just our daily lives. So that's what I wanted to share. So hopefully it's just an encouragement to you. Yeah, and I love it. He looked and saw the hills full of horses, chariots of fire all around Elisha. And so I encourage you and to remind you that there are hills full of horses, chariots of fire surrounding you in your times. That God, in your times, God is there to work with us. God is there to watch over us, to help us. Yeah.